Hello and welcome back to the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Josh Pierson. Josh, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Josh Pierson. I'm 18 years old, currently driving an Indynxt by Firestone. I did 2 years of the World Endurance Championship previously, and right now I'm heading into year number two and my first full season of Indynxt.
So, how did you get into racing?
So getting into racing for me was actually a bit of a interesting one. I think a lot of people come from racing backgrounds or families that were, really involved in motorsports. In my case, my dad, he happened to get into racing when he sold his company and he just raced locally in SCCA, nothing big. But he would take, us to the track. And from the time I was two, I was going to races, just local events. And it all kind of came together on my sister's fifth birthday when, that's the age you can start karting. And so we went to the go-kart track having no idea what it was and met some great people out at Pat's Acres Racing Complex in Canby, Oregon. And from there, that's kind of what led down this journey. I wasn't able to drive yet. I was only two, but apparently I don't remember, but apparently I was pushing my sister out of the cart. And so the owner, Chris Agri, he said, look, the track's closed on Mondays. You guys can come out and I'll have my kids teach them how to drive. So I've been karting ever since I was two, and it was a bit of an abrupt start, but one that I look back very fondly on.
So, you compete in many different series. How do you ensure that you're balancing that whilst also doing schoolwork?
It's a bit hard. Luckily for me, I've got great people behind me. And so it's all my school is online. It's super accessible. I actually have gotten kind of lucky with the system. It just goes through my public high school that I should have been attending. So, they do all the systems and all the online work, and then I just get sent basically what to do. It's super accessible. It's just through one website, and it's easy to log on and get it all done. So I've been pretty fortunate to be in a good scenario when it comes to my schooling so far.
Can you sum up your 2023 seasons in 3 words?
Ooh, eventful, um, hectic, um, and we'll go with promising.
What was the next question? Do you feel that there's a significant difference between driving the Indynxt car and the prototype cars?
Yes, I think that in general, every car has different unique styles and feelings and how it wants to be driven and how it, performs. Fortunately, I've gotten the chance and opportunity to drive many different cars in my career already, which is, fantastic considering I've had such a short career. Um, and the Indian X car is lightweight. It's spunky. It's got a lot of character to it. It's a car that wants to drive you. And it's very easy to let that happen. But the fastest way to drive any car is to be on top of it, and to be driving the car, not letting it drive you. And so the Indian X car is very spunky, very rambunctious. It's physical. It's hard. It's very unique for what it is. Whereas the P2 car, it really suits my general driving style and is something that's a bit more flexible. The P2 car is heavier, but it offers more flexibility in the driving. It's smoother, it's much more calm. And those two driving styles are very different from each other.
Is the Indynxt car like similar to the old Formula 2 cars, so the ones before this season?
The GP2 car, I have had the opportunity of driving, and I think that the GP2 car is a decent representation of Indy Next. Indy Next is definitely more on top of the track, more loose, more skittish. But the GP2 car is similar. I would say GP2 is probably a better example towards maybe IndyCar currently than Indy Next. But I haven't driven the IndyCar yet, so it's hard for me to comment on that one.
How do you ensure that you're keeping hydrated throughout a race? Do you have like an isotonic drink or just water?
I do take hydration tablets with me that I put in water, and I've tried many different things. We always have some hydration stuff on hand. Electrolytes are important, so any kind of hydration drink as well. What we in the P2 car during the race, we've been lucky to have drink systems. And so you have a system in the car that allows you to do that. In Indy Next, the races are short enough that we don't have any drink systems in the car. but it's not really super necessary because the races aren't terribly long.
How long are they in Indynxt?
It's roughly 45 minutes to an hour.
If you could pick any number as your race number, which would you choose and why?
14, which is what I currently use in Indynxt. That's always been my race number since I was very little. It's actually it stems from my birthday, which is on Valentine's Day. So I've always been number 14 in karting. I guess it just kind of became my number. It was also a little bit of a lucky number, so that's always been my go-to.
As the youngest person to ever race in the Le Mans 24 hours, the 24 hours of Daytona, and the 1,000 miles of Sebring, do you feel as though your teammates helped to mentor you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sports car racing is unique in the sense that if you're a young driver coming in, you have lots of great guys to work with, and really, show you the ropes. I was fortunate to be surrounded by great people to work with for both years in the World Endurance Championship, and at IMSA. And so I had lots of, prying eyes and helping people that were there to help me along. Ollie, Alex, Tom, all these guys have been a big help to me, including Guido and Yob and some of the others I've driven with in IMSA. So it's I think it's a unique scenario in endurance racing to have that kind of support and backing, and have those people you can bounce questions off of. Hey, what were you doing here? What does the car do here? How can I improve my driving? What do you do there? What's your style? I think it was very helpful to have that kind of, those people to bounce information off of. Um, and yeah, it was something, I think I was very fond of my teammates and who I've had the pleasure of driving with. So yeah, I've definitely had quite a bit of help from Ollie and those guys, and yeah, grateful for everything they've done for me so far.
If you could share a car with any driver, or I suppose because like in IMSA you have two teammates, uh, who would you choose?
Um, it's difficult. I've driven with lots of fantastic drivers, and I'm sure there's lots of drivers that would be just as good to work with. I have to go with Ollie. I've driven with Ollie for the last 2 years in WEC, and he's quite the character. He's a hard worker, and he has a lot of advice to share. And in terms of joining him, I would really like to go for redemption at Le Mans with Tom. So I wouldn't mind having my same driver lineup that we had in 23, and going for glory, since last year we got to lead at midnight and then ran into all our issues. But I think we had a car that was capable of winning, so I wouldn't mind going back and reattempting it.
If the opportunity presented itself, would you go back and do IMSA, Le Mans, or WEC and Indynxt all together, or would you want to like maybe only focus on the endurance for 1 year?
Indy has been my clear focus this year. And being gold, doesn't really help me in the endurance side. If there's an opportunity to do Le Mans, I would love to do it. But it's just a matter of finding out what works schedule wise. Indy Next has a bit of conflicts this year with WEC in particular, but it's fine because the P2 car is gone in WEC. Um, but for me, I think that if there was an opportunity to do Le Mans, I'd love to go do it. But is it going to work schedule wise? It's hard to say. I think right now there's a test session that we have for Indy Next that's scheduled basically right on top of it, and it's at the Milwaukee Mile, which is a track we haven't raced yet. So that's a very important test to be at. And for that reason, I think it's going to be hard to do Le Mans. If I have a good opportunity, I'm probably going to take it, but I will most likely end up missing some of the test day at Le Mans, which is quite important. So it would be a bit of a challenge, but yeah, if there's an opportunity, I would for sure love to jump in and get started.
What is your ultimate road car?
Um, I've always loved a McLaren P1. I don't think I would ever I don't think I would ever want to own one. In particular, I'm more of a practical person, especially when it comes to road cars. As long as my road car is getting me where it needs to go and is efficient, then I have no real qualms. Um, but I do love the look of a McLaren P1. It's always been my favorite kind of supercar, hypercar. So I would have to say for sure McLaren P1.
Do you have any racing superstitions?
I used to have I used to have a few that I would do. I used to wear two different colored gloves when I was in USF 2000. I don't do that anymore. And I'm pretty relaxed. That was kind of the only thing I used to do was back in karting and in USF 2000, I wore two different colored gloves. I don't do that anymore. But it was actually kind of a nice thing. So I'm thinking about maybe the next pair of gloves I get, bringing it back just for a little bit of nostalgia. But not as really like a superstition, more as just a throwback. That was kind of the only thing that was unique that I did. Apart from that, no, not really. I tend to be pretty relaxed, and what I do before getting in the car tends to change.
If you like listen to music before getting in the car, what kind of music do you listen to? Like, can you give us a song?
Um, it depends. I think it changes from race to race. I love music. I play a lot of different instruments. And so what I listen to can range from, classical piano to even hip hop or rap. So it's very kind of all across the board. I would say in general, I like to listen to something that's more of a pick me up. Polyphia has some great songs. They're a band that plays kind of like an alternative rock. Um, a few partners or people that come and do the song with them, but the band themselves don't do any vocals.
Which track are you most looking forward to racing this year?
There's a few. I love street circuits. St. Pete has always been a favorite of mine. So I'm really looking forward to getting the season it started at St. Pete. I absolutely love that track, just the atmosphere, right being by the water. It's one of my favorites. Barber is a very cool layout. It hasn't been statistically my best circuit, but I also didn't do the race last year. So it's not one of my best tracks, but the layout is fun to drive and super fluctuating with elevation. In terms of other tracks that I'm quite looking forward to, Portland is my home race. So I'm always looking forward to that one. And last year I don't even think I got to do a lap in the race. So it'd be nice to be able to do a couple laps in the race at home.
On the Indynxt website, you said driving a car is like art. Can you explain what you meant by this?
I think that driving a car is like an art form, and one of the reasons I say that is that there's a lot more that goes into it than I think people initially believe. For one, it's becoming more and more widely known how physical motorsports is and what it actually takes to drive the cars. But for two, the style and the feeling in the car is so unique. I think that, any race car has its own art form and it's this variation that I say makes it like art because no two cars are really the same and no two drivers are the same. It's very unique in that sense. It's not like a sport like football or soccer where a lot of players have a very similar technique. And you can kind of go into every match with the same mindset. You can't drive every car the same way. And so I think that's really what makes it that art form is that it's no two pieces of art are the same, and in this way I think it's similar.
Can you talk us through a bit of your workout routine? Because obviously we all know motorsport's very physical, but can you tell us like what you do specifically to motorsports?
We do a lot of cardiovascular work, quite a bit of neck work. We have Iron Neck, which is a great tool. So you can load the neck and really get motion and flexion in your neck. Um, we tend to try and stick to, ideally you don't want to be super built. You want to have a bit of the sleeper build. You want to be strong, but not necessarily muscular. Because you still want to stay as light as you can. You want to stay small. These cars are not easy to get into, and in particular, the P2 car is quite cramped. The Indynxt car as well is not the biggest in terms of tub size. So it's very, it's important that we do maybe a bit lighter weight, but more rounds and more reps. That way we kind of build muscle without building, too much of that actual muscle build up. You're just building the strength.
If you could only race in one 24-hour race, which would you choose?
There's a lot of them these days, and a lot of really cool events, and some that I haven't done yet. But I think you have to pick Le Mans. It's just so unique, and it's the one that everyone wants to win. It's the crown jewel of endurance racing, and so I think it's the one you have to go to.
What do you think will be more challenging this year, ovals or street circuits?
Um, Probably street circuits, but it's difficult to it's a bit of a toss up because we haven't been to one of the or to two of the ovals that we're going to be at this year. And so it's a bit of a challenge understanding what those ovals are going to be like. Obviously, Iowa and Gateway I've driven before, and I have an understanding of how they're going to progress throughout the weekend, but we don't know anything about the Nashville Superspeedway um or the Milwaukee Mile. So those two are kind of an unknown quantity at the moment. I think that street circuits always present a challenge because the lap has to be really on the limit, and you're finding that line between, you know, what's right on the edge and what's just a little bit too over it. But when you go over that edge, you're in the wall. And ovals can be similar in that way since there's no real runoff room for ovals. But in general, I think a lot of the ovals that we go to the next are very safe. And so I think that the street circuits present a little bit more difficulty in terms of qualifying and really extracting the lap time.
I've got a really stupid question. Is the Milwaukee Mile actually a mile? Like the circuit?
Uh, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay.
I would need to double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's actually a mile.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Avoid the Tyrewall podcast, and thank you to Josh for doing this interview. See you next week. Bye.